Hello everybody. My name is Holly. I am the VP of Programming for the Residence Hall Association. And for those of you who may not know, we are the governing body for all students who live on campus, and we strive to host informative and engaging programs for the student body. So now without further ado, let me introduce my colleague, Kinsley Slaughter.
Hi everyone, and again, thank you so much for coming tonight. My name is Kinsley Slaughter, and I serve as the VP of Administration and Finance on the RHA Executive Board. And I'm also the committee chair of the Health and Wellness Committee. Tonight, I'm very honored to welcome you all to the first installment of RHA's three-part self-love speaker series. Tonight, our speaker is going to be Dr. Michaela Howells, who is a biological anthropologist and human biologist who specializes in maternal and child health. So without further ado, I will pass the conversation on to her.
Great. Thank you so much for having me today. Thanks especially to Holly and Kinsley for asking me to join you to talk about this topic that's really important to me, and I hope that will also be really important to you. I do want to point out that this is being recorded, and so if this is something that you want to come back to, clarify some details, you'll have that opportunity if you want to share it with someone. Please do so. We would love this to go out as far as possible, but also recognize that people have work, children, lives that they need to address as well. For those of you who are here right now, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, it's a 7 o'clock on a Tuesday, and I'm just really glad that we're all in one place. Okay, so without further ado, hi, I am Dr. Michaela Howells, and I am super excited to talk to you about period poverty. So I am an anthropologist. You're saying to yourself, Dr. Howells, what is this amazing anthropology you speak of? And I'm so glad you asked. So anthropology is the comparative study of humans cross-culturally. So I personally am a biological anthropologist. And as biological anthropologists, we are interested in the intersection between biology and culture. So think about the evolutionary premise behind what makes us humans, right? And I'm particularly really interested in differences in health, disparities in health. Why is it that different people have different health outcomes around the globe? And so as an anthropologist, we work closely with the local communities. So whether we are working, I work in American Samoa and in Bali, Indonesia, my two prominent spaces globally, but I also work within our own community. And do work, which we're going to talk about a little bit later here. I have some examples here of my work abroad. Okay, so this talk, so I'm thinking it's going to be about 30 minutes here. And as I'm chatting away, I would love you to throw questions in the chat. If you want to address them openly to everyone, that's fine. If you'd rather just send them to me, I'm happy to check those out. And I can't see the chat while I'm talking, so we will get through those and talk through those when we towards the end here. But there's a lot of space for chatting. And I also want to point out that throughout this, I'm going to be asking a couple questions here and there. Again, if you have access to the chat, throw some answers in there. Let's play with these ideas, or just write them down yourself. Okay, so we're going to talk about who menstruates and how much they menstruate. And then we're going to talk about period poverty and talk about what that is. All right, so who menstruates? Well, as a biological anthropologist, I want to take this from an evolutionary perspective. And the short version is old world primates. So old world monkeys. So these are any monkeys that can't hang from their tails. There's a lot more involved than that, but that's a good baseline. And that obviously includes humans. And we have one of my favorite humans on Earth. Anyone recognize her? It's Dolly Parton, right? But besides primates and old world primates, bats also menstruate. Who knew, right? And elephant shrews. So you might be saying, okay, what? How is it that these are the ones who are menstruating? These are the species. And I will answer that question in my classes. So come take classes with me and we're going to dive into it and it's going to be fantastic. Okay. So you're going to notice throughout this talk, I'm going to be using menstrual hygiene instead of feminine hygiene. So why would I not be using feminine hygiene? why would I consider that? Well, because it's not just women who menstruate, right? You can be menstruating as a man. So for instance, trans, non-binary individuals also menstruate. And it's important when we're talking about menstrual equity, which is what really this talk is about, and this discussion is about, to remember that there's any uterus having person can potentially menstruate. And so as we're talking about how do we outreach into communities, how do we serve the needs of communities, how do we recognize equity and address the needs of people, we need to ensure that we're also including all of those uterus having people. Okay, so how much? So if we're just talking about the actual like how much component, well, it's 10 to 35 milliliters a cycle. So what does that mean? That's about a couple of teaspoons worth to about 6 teaspoons worth over the course of the menstrual cycle. Now, this is something I think is really important because it's, if you are not someone who menstruates for whichever reason, it's sometimes like there's a lot of misconception there about how much people do lose, like how much are they actually producing within that menstrual period. And it's really not that much. And it's, again, it's these basically a few teaspoons worth. Okay, so again, this is like the whirlwind tour because there's so much we can talk about with menstruation and menstrual health. And so again, these just highlights, happy to answer questions, happy to get with you later to, chat more, happy to have you in my classes, just saying, it's pretty great. So I want you to think about menstruation, like in terms of like us as a species, right? We know that as humans, we menstruate. Okay, fine. Is it the most common state? So if you are a menstruating person and you're in the United States, you may think, okay, so like every month is this average, right? But what I'd like you to think about here, and I would mind you to toss some ideas out in the comments here, is what happens when we compare, for instance, the average American, right, who has high access to hormonal birth control, right, compared to what we call naturally fertile populations. So naturally fertile populations are populations that are not utilizing hormonal birth control. And so this is, this is something, especially in anthropology, that as we're trying to understand the baseline of our bodies and our evolution, we look to communities that aren't using hormonal birth control to understand what a typical cycle and what a typical life history is what we call it would look like, right? Okay, so I want you to either write down or throw in the chat, who do you think would have more menstrual periods over their lifetime? Your average American or someone in a naturally fertile population? Let you write that down, whether it's whether you're putting that in the chat or whether you're writing it down yourself. Okay, getting some guesses coming in here. All right, so love it, love it. Okay, so Americans, like the average American who is on hormonal birth control, is likely to have about 450 menstrual cycles within their lifetime, right? So again, think to yourself, do you expect a naturally fertile population to have less or more? They have less. They have less by a lot. So what's going on? Why are they having less? What's the difference between these populations? What's going on? Well, what are two major life events that can disrupt a menstrual period? All right. So two major components, pregnancy and anyone? Lactation, right? So what we recognize as any, hopefully, hopefully when people recognize that they're missing their menstrual periods, that it's a positive thing to find out that they're missing it, right? But typically what we say, like, okay, I've missed a period, am I pregnant, right? Taking that test. But what we think of less is the role of lactation, right? So lactation actually suppresses your menstrual period as well. Now, the caveat on this, right? The thing to keep in mind is that this is only true if your nutrition isn't effectively keeping up, if you don't have the same nutrients to keep up with the amount that you're breastfeeding, right? So if you're going to Sonic every day and having a milkshake and really achieving those calories your body needs, your body is going to recognize that and say, okay, well, we can lactate and we can start menstruating and ovulating, right, to get pregnant again. So now, again, I bring this up because this comes back to evolution, right? Think about the amount that your body is taxed if you are pregnant, or sorry, if you're breastfeeding and you're pregnant, right? That it takes a lot of energy to do those things. And so this effectively is a way that your body hormonally cancels these events out so that you're able to fully engage with that offspring. Okay, so with this, if you're in a naturally fertile population, if you're less likely to be using hormonal birth control, you are more likely to spend more of your life pregnant and more of your life lactating, which can take you out of years of menstruating. I have so many more things I want to tell you just on this slide alone, but come take my classes and we'll talk about all of it, and it'll be magnificent and it will change your world and you'll all be anthropology majors. Okay, so let's talk about period poverty. Period poverty is the lack of access to sanitary products, menstrual hygiene education, toilets, hand washing facilities, and or waste management. Now, we're going to take this, we're going to talk about this from a global perspective and a local perspective. We are going to, I'm going to have a few numbers for you, but I'm really wanting you just to really get the takeaway of why this matters and why are we even talking about it. What I also want to recognize here is that because I'm trying to maximize the time that we have for answering questions and for chatting afterwards, I'm certainly not going to go through all examples how period poverty affects people's lives. So for instance, we could talk about what does it look to be an incarcerated person and be facing period poverty. What does it mean to be an unsheltered person, right? What does it mean to be just a person with absolutely limited means trying to address the needs? If you're trying to buy diapers and you're trying to buy menstrual products, right? But I want to put those in your mind to be thinking about as we're moving through this and thinking about these ideas. And when we work through some of these ideas and these challenges, I have some solutions, I have some answers, and I have some ways that you can directly get involved. Okay, so let's dig into this a little bit, shall we? Okay, so some of the major challenges associated with period poverty, and we're going to go into and examine some of these examples, is that individuals who cannot address their needs, their menstrual hygiene needs, can be ostracized from basic activities. So this could be in looking at some global communities. You could be ostracized from eating certain foods, from socializing. So if you've ever heard of like menstrual huts, for instance, a space where you're expected to go and wait until your menstrual cycle is complete. Where I work in Indonesia, you can't go into the temples if you're menstruating. So there's a separation that occurs there associated with this. And as you can imagine, this impacts school and work as well. It changes your ability to interact with the people who you may want to interact with and also engage fully with your education. I think this can be really, the school component is something that our school is so disrupted right now. We can start thinking about that disruption and how that can affect others in terms of their life outcomes. So we see that a shortage of resources stop menstruating people from going to work and school, right? So we're gonna explore that in just a moment here. But I want you to start to think about it. And again, we're going to look at this at the global and local level. Okay, so globally, I want to tell you to steal your heart, because there's going to be some harsh numbers here, but maybe don't steal your heart. Maybe, strengthen your heart, and then let's do something about this. 2.3 billion people live without basic sanitation. So basic sanitation being the ability to wash your hands after using the bathroom, access to a toilet, with flushable water, right? Spaces to get rid of trash and remove trash from your environment, right? And this is effectively 30% of all people on Earth. So this is an extraordinary number. And again, if your heart and your gut is nodding up a little bit about this, I do have some answers for us coming, but it is something that we need to be aware of. That's a challenging. I mentioned hand washing. 27% of people in developing countries have adequate hand washing facilities at home. So I want to be clear, that's not a typo. They have adequate hand washing facilities. So only 27%. So this is pertinent in terms of menstrual hygiene, right? But it's also pertinent, especially as we're thinking about like COVID, right? And your ability to prevent transmission of disease and infection. Okay, so we're at a baseline. We've got major challenges to overcome. We see the impoverished individuals disproportionately affected, and we see a challenge with managing periods with safety and dignity. And I keep coming back to this as global and local, because many times we get this mindset of it's like, oh, it's this faraway place with people who don't look like me. And it's like, no, it is very much happening right here on campus, that we have students who are challenged with managing to get their basic needs met. Again, I have answers. Okay, so why is this a problem? So poor menstrual hygiene is linked to reproductive and urinary tract infections. And if you have not had a urinary tract infection, they're a nightmare, and they're really challenging to get rid of. They're very easy to get and hard to get rid of. Other impacts include negative mental effects, the disempowerment associated with this. We're going to talk about education in a minute here. And the embarrassment about a normal biological process, right? That stigmatization that individuals experience in being ostracized from their communities. And this really comes down to our need for menstrual equity policies, both like in a global sphere, countrywide, our own communities within UNCW. Okay, so we could think about the fact that the lack of access to menstrual resources causes many girls to miss school. And I'm specifically using girls here because the many of the studies that are out there are focused on girls and specifically use that language. And so because I'm pulling on those, I'm specifically using girls. You could think about this, like, how does missing school impact their lives? Okay, so think about this for a minute. So we have girls, so menstruating age girls, so we can think like, let's say 10 to 18, let's say. How might them missing school impact their entirety of their lives? Give that a moment to think about. Okay, so it's devastating, truly. Young girls who do not receive an education, and this is again tied to missing because of the lack of resources. are more likely to enter child marriages. With that, they're more likely to experience earlier pregnancy. Again, partially because they're not yet fully developed, they're more likely to experience pregnancy complications, which also include dying in childbirth and also having complications that have lifelong consequences for their reproductive health and their own health. They're more likely to be malnourished, right? Remember when I was saying about being pregnant and breastfeeding at the same time, right? And like we talk about these trade-offs in terms of energy, right? That malnourishment fits right into that conversation. They're also more likely to be victims of domestic violence, right? So to be clear, what we're talking about is girls not having and menstruating people not having a way of preventing themselves from bleeding through their clothing, not having access to be able to modify something to be able to stop bleeding through, not having the ability to change out a pad through the course of a day, right? So these are, again, this is basic hygiene needs, and it prevents them from living their full experience of life, and changes the direction of their lives. Something that's so simple as a pad. Okay, so again, because one of the things I worry is that we do the thing where like, oh, but that's these foreign people over here, and isn't it just so sad? But it's easy for us to do that separation component because that's not us. Well, it is us. So in the US, so there's a survey I'm using here of 13 to 19-year-olds. And they identified the cultural stigma associated with menstrual poverty, right? And being unable to achieve their needs here. So for instance, 25% say that they would rather miss class than go to school while lacking menstrual products, right? This is exactly like our global population of girls. They don't want to go to school if they are worried about bleeding through their clothes, right? 20% can't afford to purchase the materials that they need. Again, this is in the US that we're talking about. 75% are experience stress because they don't have access to the resources. They don't have access to these menstrual products. 61% have worn tampons for more than 4 hours. So for those of you who are not tampon wearers or not familiar, it is recommended that you remove tampons within 3 hours, 4 hours, or some that you can wear longer. But there's a time suggestion, basically cut off, that there's a point where bacteria starts growing and you want to change it out in terms of protecting your physical health. So wearing tampons for longer periods of time are associated with having reduced health outcomes effectively. Okay, and here's my favorite one. 76% feel like they know more about the biology of frogs than they do the female body. And I can tell you that as someone who teaches human growth and development, right, that one of the main things I love about teaching that course is that we effectively get to switch this around, right? Where our students leave and they have that framework to understand the body, and a uterus having body. Okay, so that's a whole lot of things, right? There's a whole lot of heartache, a whole lot of frustration, a whole lot of discomfort associated with, and it's a big topic. So let's talk about some of the things that we can actually do, right? I'm fond of saying that UNCW is the real world. We talk about when you're in the real world, well, you're in the real world. You are in it and you are experiencing it and you're a member of it. And it's like you're in part of a training portion of it, but you're still can affect change. So the overall goal, right, of course, with all of these different pieces and examples that we're examining here is to achieve menstrual equity, right? So having full access to sanitary products and menstrual products, globally having access to proper toilets and hand washing facilities, sanitation and hygiene education, waste management, a destigmatization surrounding this material. And a core component of this, of course, is education, which of course I'm going to say because I'm an educator, right? But it really does make a extraordinary difference in communities as whether they're a menstruating person or a non-menstruating person, recognizing what's happening. And this is important is that to have at an early age, both at home and at school, right? Which means ensuring that parents are also fully educated and recognize this. And this helps break the stigma associated with menstruating. So this is obviously much easier said than done, but we're all here today gathered and we're all talking about this and thinking about this. And as I'm going to share with you, there's active movements on campus that are helping address this. So it's Seahawks helping Seahawks. It's supporting each other and addressing it from, UNCW outwards. Okay, so with this, I want to talk to you about the pink tax briefly. If you haven't heard of the pink tax, it's named after marketing loves using pink to target women, right? And they love targeting anything that's pink. And then it's a joke, but it's a reality that you can have exactly the same item. One is pink and one is blue. Which one's going to be more expensive? The pink one, right? The pink one. And this ties directly into the pink tax. So this is we find that menstrual products are taxed as a luxury item. And this is like our only form of gender-based discrimination tax that's gender-based discrimination that we see. Now, how much, either put this in the chat or write it down or just think heavy thoughts. How much extra tax do you think that a person pays on menstrual products? I'll give you a minute, just throw it out there. Great, seeing some answers coming in here. All right, so here we go. In North Carolina alone, menstrual products are seen as non-essential, which is the kind of thing that you say when you've never menstruated, right? Because they are essential goods. We are taxed at 4.75%, plus an additional 2 to 3% depending on where you live in North Carolina. So effectively, what this is saying is that this is a luxury item. That is something that, it's an extra thing. It's not something that's necessary. So it's, where you get a certain taxation rate for toothpaste or toilet paper, it's absolutely much higher for menstrual products. And like I said, because I think this is really critically important, it's the only gender-specific tax that we face in the USA. And so it's something that's major issue. Now, you might say that, well, this is not something that we can address. This is kind of a big topic. This is not something we can change. But states around the United States have been doing this. They have changed this out. And full countries, anyone know which country recently just did away with the pink tax and actually made menstrual products free for everybody? That's right, Scotland. Right? So Scotland is the first country to provide free menstrual products to everybody, recognizing that this is a critical need, that this is something that is important, and this is something that is addressing multiple challenges across in terms of educational challenges, poverty, right? And equity. So good job, Scotland. If you're Scottish, go ahead and just, pat yourself on the back. I'll give you that. I love this sign. It's about bloody time. Oh, I can hear my family's English. I can hear my grandmother yelling that. Okay, so we've talked about some general things, right? But let's talk about how you can get some support and how you can make a difference. Holly and Kinsley, I'm going to ask you to start looking at the chat and see if there are questions, because we're going to get to that just shortly here. Okay, so we just talked about the pink tax, right? And we talked about this push, how we can start thinking about this, and many people are, about having this repealed. So I'll have you know that we have a team in New Hanover County who is working to work a bill into the North Carolina Congress to be able to repeal the pink tax. So that is something that is brewing. If you're interested, I'll have some contact information for you. But if you're interested in knowing more about it, right? The Department of Education, in terms of like the federal level Department of Education, has a push to recognize period products as health necessities. So there's this a movement to have it recognized as like toilet paper. Like if you go into a public space or government building, they have to provide toilet paper in the bathrooms, right? So having it so it's like this is another product that would be provided. There's a push to support policies that protect students who menstruate, right? So making anyone who's ever had their period in high school and ran out of bathroom passes and they need to go to be able to change out their pad knows what I'm talking about when we're talking about these policies that protect individuals. And then this funding period products in school bathrooms. Imagine being able to go into a bathroom and having these materials. And so here we're talking about junior high, we're talking about high school, right? But we're also talking about the university level. With this, I just want to add a little note as we're talking about having these products in bathrooms. Think about this if you are a trans person or a non-binary person who's not able to utilize the bathroom that fits your identity, right? And you're someone who needs a menstrual product, but you're forced to be in a different bathroom, right? I want you to like think about this in terms of how that changes people's access and keep it in mind. Okay, so here's what I wanted to shout out. SGA, whether you know this or not, are rock stars, and they have been working for years. We're talking years to be able to run this trial. And the trial is designating 4 buildings on campus with menstrual hygiene dispensers with products for free, right? So that students on campus are able to go and get access to these products without charge and accessing these needs. So this is a long-term goal that's taken multiple years, multiple members of this team. I'm going to talk about Hawks Harvest in a minute. Their leadership was also part of that, Sister Rose, a lot of people involved, but SGA were the spearheads in this. And so this is something that you'll hear more about this over time, but this is exciting. And if this is something that you think is positive and you think is valuable, let the SGA know, right? This again, when we're talking about policy, we could talk about it as this global policy and we could talk about all these levels, but it starts here in our home and at our university. So I'm so proud of our university and SGA for this. I want to point out if you're someone who has challenges in terms of accessing resources for whatever reason, I want to share with you that Hawks Harvest is available to you on campus. So this is, sorry, I know this is a whole lot of map happening here. All right, so here's the library and here's the clock tower. And we go over here and we wave at English. Hey guys, here is the water tower right over here. Across the way, right? At the Catholic Campus Ministry, that's where we find Hawks Harvest. And Hawks Harvest is a fantastic program. It's has a food and health hygiene pantry that's available. I believe Sister Rosemary's with us today and hoping she can share any links to the program in here for us. Know that the pantry is open from Thursday from 3 to 5:15 or by appointment. And I share this because it's not just about getting your food needs met, right? We know that there are students on campus. I was speaking to a student just the other day who was telling me that they had to use a sock because they couldn't afford menstrual products, right? And these stories are not uncommon. They are faced by students on our campus. And so the SGA's movement to increase equity around menstrual products is powerful. Hawk's Harvest, you can go there and get access to a whole range of menstrual products and to help address those needs. On the flip side, it's also a space to donate products to if you're so inclined. And we'll talk more about donating in just a minute here. I want to give you a heads up because Hawk's Harvest has a lot of menstrual cups. Now they have lots of other options as well, whatever fits your need. But you might want to consider trying out a menstrual cup. These are cost saving, they're environmentally friendly, they are washable and reusable. Again, this is recognizing that you need to be in a position to be able to change them out, right? So in terms of having access to full sanitation and that kind of thing. But this is something that you may want to try, or you might know someone who wants to try. And they have them for free. You can go try them out free of charge. They are expensive if you're just buying one. So why wouldn't you go to Hawk's Harvest and get your incredible menstrual cup hookup, right? Some other things that maybe people are less aware of, we know about like pads and tampons are typically people are aware of them. Thinking about menstrual briefs and menstrual undies, right? And all shapes and sizes that are highly absorbent and give you an option. Also means that you don't have plastic if you don't, if you are allergic to plastic, something like that. This is another way. I want to share, these are reusable pads. They're created. This is UN development. This is a tweet from them. Girls' periods affect basically their quality of life, especially school attendance. Tanzania's Women's Choice Industries produce affordable menstrual products to end period poverty, right? So these, in this case, again, here's a global example. These are washable, reusable, but we can also, these are potentially an option. All of those set up that you have full sanitation to be able to wash, right? Recognizing that. Okay, so in the last pieces here, I want to share with you another way that you can make a difference. We have, I'm just checking my time here. Okay, we're doing good. We are going to be having a ongoing drive on campus. So you perhaps you've moved out of dorms before and have seen these pods that park outside to collect goods. So this is the closet clean out that has become very popular on campus. And what it does is enables, as you're moving out of your dorm, if you can't fit everything into your car, you can donate your furniture, you can donate your clothes, right? And food products, and they don't have to go to waste. In fact, they go and serve people right here in our community and keep them out of the trash, which is very exciting. So we're marked down some dates. Here we go. We've been talking with the team here, to get us all sort of tied together in this. April 26th through 30th, you're going to see 9 pods on campus. And these are going to be by different halls and different areas. These pods will not only hold, boxes for all the other goods I just said, but they'll also have a place for you to put menstrual products. So if you're in a position to donate menstrual products, here's the place to do it, right? If you're interested in our more community-based event, so that week, following that week of those pods being available on campus, May 1st and 2nd, which is a Saturday and Sunday, we are going to be having a menstrual hygiene drive at multiple locations, so including Hawk's Harvest, the YWCA, Seeds of Healing, Frank Haar Foundation office, and several churches that we're confirming with at this point. And this is going to be, maybe one of my team members can throw this. I think it's from 12 to 3, I think. But if you're interested, either you're in a position where you're like, oh my gosh, this is so great, I want to be part of this, I want to donate, or if you're like, I'm not in a position to donate, but I would love to volunteer. Here's how you can do this. So we've got, I'm going to ask you to contact Macon Funderburk, who is my thankfully now she's my colleague, and she is an alumni of the anthropology program, and she traveled to Indonesia with me, and we worked together, and I am delighted to have her in our work and be part of this team. But if you go ahead and email her in the subject line volunteer, we will connect you up and include you in this incredible project that's going on. It's also a space. I'm going to change over here. I can put this back up in a little bit. Here's my email address. So if you have more questions, if you have more thoughts, if you're like, oh my God, I wanted to ask this, but I was too shy, fabulous. Email me, we can chat, we can Zoom, whatever you like. And if you're interested in volunteering, please contact Macon. But also if you're interested in being part of, talking about repealing the pink tax, reach out to Macon and let her know that as well. But know that we're available. I just want to give a shout out before we do some questions here, that there's a couple different ways. If these topics excite you, right? If these things are topics that like speak to you on whichever level, if you're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm loving that we're talking about this from a local perspective, that we're talking about it from an evolutionary perspective, that we're considering all these different variation, then you might want to think about checking out anthropology. Okay, so we have, in terms of Facebook, we have UNCW Department of Anthropology down there. My lab is the Growth Adaptation Pregnancy Stress Lab. Here are some of my incredible students who have worked with me all over the globe. And we're always looking for hardworking, enthusiastic people who want to affect change. So come join us. And then also like, I have great classes. Come take physical anthropology with me. It counts as your natural science requirement. And I'll be teaching that and medical anthropology next semester. This is going to be a medical anthropology lecture next semester. So you're already one lecture in. So you're basically already have an A in that class. I also teach human growth and development, which I'll be teaching again next spring, human biological variation, or rock your socks, and human origins, you get to hold a Neanderthal's head. So that was a whole lot of information. And I thank you so much for listening. And I would love to answer questions and have some dialogue. I'm going to leave this up for a minute, and then I'll go back to the slide with Macon's number. Okay, so thoughts, questions. There's a million chats, and I haven't been keeping up on it. Okay, so Holly, Kinsley, did you see any questions that came up?
At the moment, I did see people kind of talking more. Yeah, we were talking about, Jim Downey just asked, did you say that we can donate menstrual cups?
So we are good right now in terms of donating the menstrual cups, but we do have, we are going to be asking for donations for all kinds of menstrual products. But the materials that we most need in our community right now are menstrual pads and tampons. And we actually have an Amazon wish list associated with this that will, if one of my team members is on who has access to that link, if they could go ahead and pop that up, that'd be really great. I'm seeing people talking about how there's definitely a learning curve with menstrual cups and how I wish we were taught more about how to use them in school. Absolutely. Can we all agree that we could all do with a lot more learning about this kind of stuff in school? Right? And it being a core component of not just like health classes, but just like biological coolness classes. This stuff is interesting. So is other biology, but like I'm a human biologist, so I've got to be, loving that more than anything else. But I love this conversation. I'm seeing a lot of people saying about, different people saying that this is they were really great when they discovered them, the cups, right? Like they take some time to learn, but once you've got it down, it's just like a game changer. And okay, great. Oh my God, I love this. Basically, I'm just going through it. Everyone's like screaming their love for menstrual cups. Okay, let's see. So Dr. Pond asked which 4 buildings on campus. Sister Rosemary, do you know what those buildings were?
I wasn't able to get that information yet.
Okay, so we'll be getting that out. I mean, this is the perfectly timed talk because it's kind of like we're right on the cusp of all these things coming out. And so again, if you want more information as you're following, check out the UNCW Department of Anthropology, because I'll certainly be posting that information as it comes. Also, Hawks Harvest will be sharing it. I'm reading the reading people's guesses here. Okay, am I missing any questions in here? What about Holly? I see you had an anonymous chat board. Is there anything on there?
Yeah, I just messaged you one.
Okay, great. Let me, as you all know, you end up getting this like massive messages. I feel like, thank you, Dr. Cannon. I believe that Dolly Parton would be delighted that she was on a slide titled Menstruating Mammals. And okay, you guys are excellent at guessing. I'm loving this so much. Okay, Vita's also okay.
Question at the very end from Kinsley.
Okay, I'm heading there. I basically want you all to be my best friends after looking at the chat. So we're just gonna make that happen. Okay, so fabulous. Okay, so Kinsley shared this question. Do you know where is period poverty the most rampant in America? So regions, age groups, or demographics? So this is a really excellent question. Dr. Cannon, if you want to chime in here, if you have a stronger answer to this, what we recognize is that period poverty tends to track with minoritized groups, and it tends to track with communities that have less access due to systemic inequalities, right? And so we particularly see it within, hold on, let me see if we've got we have some people popping in here, right? So we can recognize communities that have less access to other resources. So whether it be educational resources, nutritional resources, health resources, and they are tracking frequently, you know, with the menstrual poverty and with period poverty. But we see this across the states. So this is not it's not a skin color difference, right? So some people be like, oh, well, it's in, certain, races are more likely to have this or not. But the reality is that we see this, it's an issue in terms of access to resources in general, access to, funds to be able to take care of basic needs. And that crosses skin colors, that crosses, what we call race, because race is cultural and skin color is biological, right? But it is an extraordinary issue across lines. Okay. I have a question in here. What are some common misconceptions with female health? Okay, so this, Dr. Cannon is going to be giving a great talk in the, I think next month, that's going to address some of these and really unpack some of these. What I will put out there, I mean, we've talked about some of the stigmatized components in terms of menstruation, right? We undereducate in the United States. The reality is we undereducate. We put anything that has to do with menstruation into, like sex ed. And as you know, sex ed is variable about how it's taught. So we underprepare individuals. And so what we see is that there's so many misconceptions about female health or the health of uterus having people, right? Just basic understandings of why do you menstruate, right? What triggers menstruation? When don't you menstruate? how to take care of it. I mean, there's so many different components. Like, how does pregnancy occur? I mean, things that you think are straightforward, people don't have the background in, right? And don't understand. And it's because we underserve our students in the classroom, in like K through 12 education. We underserve them in terms of learning about their bodies in a meaningful way and learning about bodies of people who aren't like theirs, right? So non-menstruating people, learning about menstruating people's bodies. Okay, let me see. Macon's our team member here. Can you speak more about the importance of gender neutral bathrooms and language when discussing period equity? Do you think rates of missing school and work due to menstruation are higher for trans and non-binary folks? Fantastic question. Did I mention that she's an anthropologist? I'm just saying, this is what you can bring to the table, friends. So using, this is a really big question and a big statement. And so let me break it down here. Importance of gender neutral bathrooms and language when we're talking period equity. So like in the beginning, we talked about how critical it is to be talking about menstrual products, right? Instead of feminine hygiene products. The idea that people should not be prevented from being able to access resources because it doesn't align with their identity, right? We shouldn't be expecting people to utilize products that don't represent who they are and how they understand their bodies and their lives, right? So having these, having gender neutral bathrooms to enable individuals to just go to the bathroom without having to be, without having to identify to the world of like whether they're which within a binary, which they are, which we recognize that there's a lot of non-binary individuals, right? The ability to be able to get products without having to say that you're someone that you're not, right? So if you're a trans man who is having to say they need feminine hygiene products, and that's not who they are, what they are, this puts in all these barriers in terms of health and healthcare that are just non-necessary. Do I think the rates of missing school and work due to menstruation are higher for trans non-binary folks? So we know that the rates of missing school are higher for trans and non-binary folks. And this, I would not be shocked if this was a contributing factor associated with it. So we talked to trans and non-binary folks, like teens, especially teens and like preteens as well, right? And your K through 12 educated individuals who are trying to avoid going to the bathroom all day so that they don't have to go into, they don't have to go into and deal with the wrong bathroom or mislabeled bathroom for them, or have to face bullying associated with their identity, right? And so this is a major issue in terms of health. If you think about like if you're holding in your pee all day, right? This can lead to urinary tract infections. But then if you're tying onto that, if you're in a space where you're a menstruating man and you don't have receptacles, so in if you have a women's and men's bathroom, we have receptacles in the women's bathroom to put menstrual products. Well, if you're in the men's bathroom, those aren't there. There's garbage, but it means you have to walk out of the stall with your product and drop it off, right? So there are these stopping points that enable people to fully engage with their own hygiene. Okay, so let me see. Let me look at my time right here. I recognize it's 8 o'clock, so I'm going to answer this last question here. If you need to sign off, that's totally fine. I will not be offended. And I'm going to stick on for like a couple minutes after, but I certainly want to make sure Holly and Kinsley have space to wrap up here. So a question, very curious, when you're on birth control and you do not get a period, what is happening to the uterus? Does it just not shed? Oh my gosh. Okay, come take growth and development, right? Because we chat about this, but effectively you're not producing that that lining, right? It's not you produce a lining every month that's what's being shed, and it's effectively you're not building up that lining. So this is when, if you're on, you can take some birth control pills that don't have a placebo, so you don't have a period, you just keep going through. Or if you get an intrauterine device, an IUD, some of those will prevent you from having a period. They're magical devices. Thank you, science. But you might notice that you have some spotting as you're going through this process, right? And that's because your body, your hormones are slowly decreasing, the hormones that would proliferate that uterine lining, right? And it just reduces how thick it gets over time to the point where it's just not in existence at all, not the kind that's shed. Okay. Some other really great questions. And thank you. I saw Dr. Cannon shared some great resources there. And oh my gosh, there's so many good things happening in the messages. Holly and Kinsley, did you want to say some final words before we let everyone go?
Well, I guess I would just say thank you all so much for coming, and thank you for speaking. This was a brilliant. I actually learned quite a bit that I did not expect to. I don't know. But yeah, so thank everyone for coming. We will be putting these resources on our social media. So if anything that's been brought up today, we will be putting it on our Instagram. I think it's UNCWRHA. So keep an eye out for that. But yeah, other than that, I plan on sticking around for a little bit. So you guys can trickle out if you have to go. But yeah, if you have any questions, please stay behind.
Okay, thank you, everybody. And again, thank you, Holly and Kinsley, for inviting me and welcoming me to join you and to talk with you. And like I said, I'm going to be on for a couple more minutes. And if anyone has any burning questions and desire to chat, please feel free to do so. Let me see.
Kinsley, someone asked about the next two topics for the series. If you want to talk you or Callie, just say it for the next one so people are aware.
Yeah, so this is going to be a 3-part series. This was the first installment. The second will be on nutrition health. We are working with peer educators on that. And Dr. Sasha Kanan will be speaking on, I want to say April 20th, and that will be our third and final event in the series, and that will be about sexual health. So I'm very excited, very excited.
The nutritional health one is on April 6th. Make sure you mention that. April 6th at 7 p.m. is the nutrition health one.
Yes. And all of the information will be on our Wave link as well. So if you're unsure, if you need to come back, it'll always be there. And this will also be posted onto our YouTube, which will be shared via Instagram. So for anyone who could not make it, or if you have any friends who would be interested, please share this with them. We're very excited. So yeah.
Hey, awesome. Thank you so much. This was so incredible being able to talk about this topic. It's one of those amazing topics that just spans humanity, you know, and especially as anthropologists, those are the topics that are really speak to us and engage with us. So it's what a neat opportunity. Okay, so there's a couple more questions in here. I'm just going to answer those. And if you have any more, go ahead and toss them in. I'm glad to see everyone's got their the dates for the next talk. I know that there was one that I wanted to catch. Okay, so Nina on here talks about, I've seen on shows like 60 days in where women have been denied hygienic products for their periods. They've had bloody sheets and clothes trying to absorb their blood. What is being done to provide products for them? I find this inhumane and hope that they will have access to these products. So I'm thinking that you're referring to incarcerated individuals who menstruate. Is that right? So I will share with you that in 2018, which 2018, come on, federal incarcerated people had to have free access to menstrual products, right? So think about what that meant for all of the incarcerated menstruating people before that point, right? On the state level, right, that access to those resources is a hodgepodge of rules and laws. But effectively, because we have a for-profit prison system, we are in a position where we make inmates pay for their menstrual products. Although, again, this should be like toilet paper. So there's, in terms of what's being done, I mean, there's multiple groups who are trying to change policy that enables it so that it's like on a state level in the state penitentiaries that these individuals do get access to these products. But it is slow going, right? You may have seen it in terms of COVID, where people got angry that incarcerated people were getting vaccinated before some people within the non-incarcerated community, right? Even though they're at greater risk. And so the same thing when people recognize it as if these individuals are getting free menstrual products, that somehow that they're not as, that it's like, why is it that they're getting free menstrual products and I'm not, right? So my question or my thought would be, or something to think about, is that we should be asking, like, why don't we have free menstrual products for everybody? Like, not about whether they're incarcerated or not. Why isn't it that it is something that is accessible to everybody at every level, and that it's not a resource that's so scarce and challenging to get a hold of, right? But these are, if you search for incarceration, menstrual hygiene products, there's all sorts of groups who are doing like active work to help protect and grow. And there's groups within our community that are specifically targeting working with not necessarily menstrual hygiene, but working specifically to like free mothers from incarceration, especially ones who have just like low level bails that need to be paid, right, to be able to get out. And there's action right here in New Hanover County that we can do and that we can be part of. And that's just something that's really empowering.
Absolutely. Thank you for answering my question, Dr. Howells. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, you're welcome. So this has been great, and I want to thank you all. And I want to thank you all for sticking around and for chatting. And again, you have my email. You know how to find me. You know my this project that we have going on. We would love to invite everyone to join us for Periods Don't Stop for Pandemics. And thank you again for inviting me.
Thank you so much for coming, Dr. Howells. We really enjoyed having you.
Okay. All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your day.